The mountain's grip. Can you believe that an entire superpower, with its finest engineers and most advanced machinery, was forced to surrender to a rock weighing just 12 kilograms? In 1925, all of America held its breath as it watched a narrow crevice 17 meters underground, where legendary explorer Floyd Collins was being eaten by the mountain, inch by inch. For 18 days and nights, his cries for help echoed through the radio waves, turning an obscure cave into a stage of immense courage and total helplessness. Floyd Collins was no amateur. In Kentucky, he was known as the Cave King. He could sniff out the moisture of the rocks and wriggle through fissures that would make an ordinary person hyperventilate. At the time, cave exploration was the new gold rush. Finding a beautiful cavern meant turning it into a lucrative tourist attraction. On January 30th, 1925, with an oil lamp in hand, Floyd descended into Sand Cave, hoping to find a new treasure for his family. While on his way out after exploring a tight passage, Floyd's foot accidentally brushed against a loose rock. The fatal twist happened in a split second. The rock fell, pinning his left ankle against the cave wall. Floyd was trapped 17 meters underground, in a hole just wide enough for a human body. He was lying on his stomach, head lower than his feet, with a 12-kilogram rock, no bigger than a bowling ball, acting as an eternal lock. Floyd couldn't move to lift the stone, and rescuers couldn't squeeze past him to reach it. The Cave King was now a prisoner of his own kingdom. How did hundreds of people, backed by the military and modern technology, fail to move one small rock? Sand Cave was like a winding, mud-filled digestive tract. To reach Floyd, rescuers had to crawl for hours. They tried using pulleys to hoist him out, but the agonizing pain from his trapped leg caused Floyd to black out. While Floyd fought the cold and suffocation underground, a bizarre scene unfolded on the surface. His story became the biggest media event in American history at that time. Tens of thousands of tourists arrived. Hot dog stands and balloon vendors popped up around the cave entrance like a festival. People listened obsessively to the radio, but none could truly grasp the terrifying silence Floyd was enduring. After a few days, part of the cave ceiling collapsed, cutting off all communication and food. Rescuers desperately dug a new shaft from above, but hard rock and mud slowed them down. When they finally reached Floyd after 18 days, it was too late. He had passed away from exhaustion and exposure just 3 days before they arrived. Floyd Collins' body remained in the cave for another 2 months before it could be recovered. His story is a bitter lesson in human arrogance and the brutal power of nature. It reminds us that even if you are a master of your craft, the natural world has laws we cannot control. Sometimes, the line between a great discovery and a tragedy is just a small stone beneath your feet. The human cork. If you stood on top of a 100-story building and looked down, the ground below would be nothing but tiny dots. Now, imagine flipping that building upside down into the earth. That is exactly where 20-year-old student Neil Moss was imprisoned in 1959. He wasn't locked in a room. He was wedged into a stone crevice just 45 centimeters wide. He was stuck vertically, with his arms raised high above his head, as if surrendering to the mountain. At 300 meters deep, the thing trying to kill Neil wasn't the darkness, but his own breath, which was slowly turning into a toxic cloud surrounding him. Neil Moss was a philosophy student at Oxford, but his true passion lay in deep caverns. In March 1959, Neil and a group of friends explored Peak Cavern in Derbyshire, a place nicknamed the Devil's Arse for its grandeur and peril. Neil was a skilled and enthusiastic explorer. To him, conquering fissures where no human had ever stepped was a logical puzzle he was confident he could solve with his youthful agility. But nature keeps cruel secrets. While attempting to explore an impossibly narrow vertical shaft, Neil slipped. He didn't freefall. Instead, he was corked into a funnel-shaped crack. The grim twist? Neil was stuck upright, but his feet couldn't find a single foothold. The weight of his own body caused him to sink deeper into a bottleneck less than 25 centimeters wide. The most advanced rescue equipment of the era became useless toys against a simple physics problem. How do you pull a human cork out when every movement only wedges it tighter into the stone throat? How did a rescue army of hundreds, from professional miners to the Air Force, fail to pull one slender young man out of a crack? Neil's greatest enemy wasn't the hard rock, but an invisible assassin, carbon dioxide, CO2. Because the crevice was so narrow and deep, Neil's own exhaled breath accumulated into a lethal fog. Oxygen vanished, causing Neil to drift into a coma. Rescuers lowered ropes, and a small-framed diver even braved the crawl down to Neil's side to tie them around him. They pulled until a rope rated for 500 kilograms snapped against the friction of the stone. Every time Neil regained consciousness, he could only gasp out a few words of pain before slipping back into a CO2-induced sleep. After 2 days of hopeless effort, Neil's breathing slowed and finally stopped. Doctors concluded that attempting to recover his body would only endanger the living. Neil's family made the heartbreaking choice to leave him there. Peak Cavern was sealed at his location, turning that crevice into his eternal coffin. The vertical coffin, 1,148 meters. Imagine lying at the bottom of a pit as deep as 4 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other, but the entire space is filled with jagged rock, mud, and absolute darkness. You have a traumatic brain injury, you are bleeding, and you know your companion must climb for at least 12 hours just to reach the exit and call for help. In 2014, physicist Johann Westhauser fell into this exact nightmare. This wasn't just a caving accident, it was the most massive cave rescue in European history, where 700 experts faced an impossible question. How do you get a dying man to the surface when the way home is a vertical maze kilometers long? Riesending Cave in the German Alps is not for the faint of heart. It is the country's deepest and longest cave system, a treacherous underworld of vertical drops and suffocating narrows. Johann Westhauser wasn't a curious tourist. He was one of the men who discovered and mapped the cave itself. He knew Riesending like the back of his hand. For Johann, the deep darkness was his laboratory and the place where he felt most free. But the mountain always saves its most unexpected blow. Over 1,000 meters underground, a rock suddenly dislodged, striking Johann directly in the head. The cruel twist? Riesending's greatest protector was now its prisoner. Johann was immobilized, every second a battle against brain edema. While the world above mobilized, Johann lay in 2 degrees Celsius cold, waiting for hands that had to cross a journey that would take a healthy person days to complete. Science had helped him conquer the heights, but now he was clinging to a fragile hope in the heart of a frozen mountain. Why did the rescue take 11 days despite having 700 people? The answer lies in the cruel geometry of the cave. Riesending was not a straight pipe. It was a series of bottomless pits, narrows so tight divers had to remove their oxygen tanks to fit, and slippery cliffs. To get Johann out, teams from 5 nations set up 5 underground field hospitals. The biggest challenge was moving the stretcher. Imagine hoisting a heavy litter up vertical cliffs hundreds of meters high using manual pulleys, all while ensuring the patient's injured head didn't vibrate by even a centimeter. Every meter gained was a miracle of engineering and synergy. Specialized doctors had to rappel 1,000 meters down to perform surgery and keep Johann alive on site. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a military-grade operation through the intestines of the earth. On June 19, 2014, after 11 breathless days, Johann Westhauser finally saw the sun. The liquid tomb. 4 kilometers of darkness, 10 days of absolute silence, and billions of liters of swirling floodwater. In the summer of 2018, the world watched a tiny dot on the map of Thailand, where 13 souls had seemingly been swallowed by the Tham Luang mountain without a trace. When elite divers finally found them after 10 days, the question wasn't just where they were, but how did these children survive in the mountain's stomach with no food or light, and how could they ever get out when the only exit had become a liquid guillotine of mud and debris? It started as an ordinary Saturday afternoon. 12 boys and their young coach decided to explore Tham Luang cave to celebrate a birthday. To them, the cave was a familiar playground, a wondrous maze. They entered with no food, no warm clothes, only their football shoes and youthful innocence. They expected to be out in an hour, unaware that the black clouds above the peaks were preparing to unleash their fury. The fatal twist occurred while they were deep inside. Monsoon rains flooded the cave like a hungry monster, rising with terrifying speed. The only exit was blocked by millions of cubic meters of muddy water. The 13 people were forced to retreat deeper, eventually climbing onto a narrow rock ledge 4 kilometers from the entrance. For the next 9 days, the world presumed them dead. Inside, they lived in total darkness, unable to tell day from night, hearing only the roar of water as their oxygen slowly ran out. Yet, when divers found them, they didn't see chaos. They saw 13 people sitting in an unbelievable, quiet calm. How did they survive? The secret lay in Coach Ekapol. A former monk, he taught the boys meditation to keep their heart rates steady and save every precious breath of oxygen. They didn't drink the filthy floodwater. They licked pure droplets filtering through the cave ceiling. But the rescue was the true mission impossible. To get them out, divers had to battle a 6-hour journey through raging currents and gaps so narrow they had to remove their tanks. The boys couldn't dive, and a single panic attack underwater would mean a double tragedy for both the rescuer and the rescued. International experts made a radical, unprecedented medical decision: turn the boys into unconscious cargo. To prevent panic, doctors anesthetized each boy. They were blindfolded, fitted with full-face oxygen masks, and dragged through the murky water like biological packages. On July 10, 2018, the final boy emerged to the cheers of the entire planet. The liquid guillotine. A dark, gray cloud over the Yorkshire moorlands might seem harmless to a hiker, but hundreds of meters underground, that cloud is a death warrant. In 1967, 6 veteran explorers entered Mossdale Caverns, hoping to conquer reaches never before seen by human eyes. They didn't know that the mountain above them was actually a giant stone funnel, and a single summer rain would turn the entire system into a pressurized water pipe with no escape. This is the story of a hopeless race against nature, where the enemy wasn't the dark, but a wall of water surging into every crack. Mossdale Caverns was a legendary beast in the caving world. It wasn't a grand limestone palace, it was a system of narrow, long, and muddy fissures. To navigate it, you couldn't walk. You had to slither like a snake, chest pressed into the mud, breathing in spaces just wide enough for a human frame. The 6 young men that day were all experienced. They understood Mossdale's brutality and believed their skills could conquer the mountain's narrowest throat. But nature keeps a watch that humans cannot see. While the group was deep in an area known as the Far Marathon, a sudden storm broke over the moorlands. The Mossdale system acted as a massive drain for the surrounding hills. In minutes, the narrow fissures they had just crawled through were instantly transformed into high-pressure fire hoses. Murky floodwater and churning mud surged in at an unbelievable rate. The 6 men found themselves trapped between immovable rock and a water level rising centimeter by centimeter, swallowing the last scraps of air. Why was a massive rescue army completely helpless? The answer lies in Mossdale's stranglehold design. When rescuers arrived, the cave entrance had become a violent waterfall. They tried using sandbags to dam the stream and high-power pumps to suck the water out, but the mountain kept vomiting water into the cave. The bravest divers tried to push inside, but they were blocked by thick mud and debris filling the narrows. In a space so tight you couldn't even turn around, rescue was like trying to pull a thread out of a bottle full of honey. After days of desperate effort, the team had to accept a painful truth: there were no survivors. Recovering the bodies was deemed too dangerous for the living. Eventually, the families agreed to let them rest forever where they fell. The entrance to Mossdale was sealed with a bronze plaque, turning the system into a limestone cemetery. The subterranean Everest. 80 consecutive hours and an army of over 200 people, all to move one woman just 3 miles. It sounds like a massive waste of resources, until you realize those 3 miles weren't a flat road, but a vertical, slippery, pitch-black maze deep inside the earth. In 1991, Emily Davis Mobley, one of the world's top cavers, realized that even if you are a master of the dark, a single rock falling in the wrong place can turn a mountain into a fortress prison that makes the most modern technology look tiny. Lechuguilla Cave in New Mexico is no tourist attraction. It is a cathedral of stunning gypsum crystals, but also one of the most hostile environments on the planet. To enter, you must be a permitted expert with the endurance of an Olympian and nerves of steel. Emily Mobley was exactly that. She had spent her life decoding the mysteries of the underworld, entering the cave with the confidence of someone prepared for anything. But the mountain always reminds us of our scale. While climbing a rubble-strewn slope, a large boulder dislodged and smashed directly into Emily's leg. The cruel twist was her location. Emily was at one of the furthest, most inaccessible points in the system. The distance to the entrance was 4 kilometers, but not flat kilometers. It was 4 kilometers of vertical cliffs as high as 20-story buildings, fissures so tight you had to exhale to fit through, and bottomless pits. This 4-day rescue was like major surgery on the body of a mountain. Imagine carrying a heavy stretcher through passages named the Devil's Bypass or the Mud Maze. In some sections, The rescue team had to form a human chain, passing Emily's stretcher from hand to hand like a living conveyor belt. They hung from thin ropes, using pulleys to hoist her up echoing shafts amidst the sound of falling rock and heavy breathing. The hardest part wasn't the weight. It was protecting Emily's leg. Every bump was a jolt of agonizing pain. Emily endured 91 hours of physical and mental torture, while rescuers fought exhaustion and dehydration. It was the ultimate test of human synergy. Hundreds of volunteers from across the U.S. paid for their own flights to New Mexico just to pull a rope and bring a stranger home from the abyss. When Emily finally saw the sun at the cave mouth, the world erupted. The Lechuguilla rescue didn't just save a life, it set the gold standard for cave rescue worldwide. The world is still full of hidden truths and stories that defy belief. If you're ready to uncover more of the most incredible and disturbing mysteries of our history, subscribe to Oddplain. Don't let the next story pass you by. Join us, and let's explore the unknown together. Thank you for watching, and stay curious. Goodbye.